Good evening. I would like to call this meeting of the Lammersville Unified School District Board of Education to order at 7 o'clock. You'd all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United
of the United
States
States of America
and
to the republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty and
justice for
justice
all.
for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Matthew Balzerini,
Here.
Ann Bonilla,
Here,
Colin Clements,
Here.
Sharon Lampel,
Here.
David Pombo,
Here.
Sunita Jathendra.
Approve.
Here.
Approval and/or corrections to the agenda.
There are none.
move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Having a first and second, student preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, agenda approved. Committee reports. Well, I'm not sure if there are any committee reports, so I'll just go through them. District Advisory Committee, Trustee Lampel.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. District English Language Advisory Committee, Trustee Bonilla.
The District English Language Advisory Committee will be meeting on October 22nd at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. Education Committee, there's nothing to report. Facilities Committee, Trustee Clements.
Yes, Mr. President, the Facilities Committee had a virtual meeting on September 24th. During the meeting, we reviewed facility usage and financial information. I was disappointed to note that Jansen Landscape was a topic of discussion on the agenda. The board will recall that the district recently transitioned from our previous landscape maintenance provider because of performance issue, and I'm unhappy to report that some issues are emerging with our current provider after such a short time. District staff has been communicating with Jansen Landscape relating to the issues, and Jansen has increased the number of personnel on each crew serving our district. I wanted to thank district staff for their efforts in managing this because I know it is frustrating to have these issues so soon after transitioning to a new provider. We also heard proposals from two individuals relating to being able to allow more access to the tennis courts. The committee deliberated at length about the proposals, but the consensus of the committee was not to bring either proposal to the board for consideration. The Facilities Committee discussed the need to make an adjustment to facility rental fees to address the increased efforts associated with complying with health guidelines, including cleaning requirements before and after facility use, rather than changing the entire fee structure and then changing it back after we turn the corner on COVID-19, which we certainly hope is soon. The committee liked the idea of having a special line item related to COVID-19 that can just be removed so we don't have to do a major rework twice. The committee plans on reviewing the fee structure in our upcoming virtual meeting on December 17th at 6:30, and hopefully we'll bring something back to the board shortly thereafter. Did I miss anything, Trustee Lampel?
No, I think you got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Policy Committee, Trustee Bonilla.
The Policy Committee is currently reviewing a set of policies, and they are due back to district staff on October 21st.
Thank you. Safety Committee, Trustee Balzerini.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. And the Wellness Committee will have a meeting on October 21st, and I believe that's at 3:30. It will be a virtual meeting. Moving on to Governing Board reports. Madam Student Trustee.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Trustee Bonilla.
I just wanted to thank our teachers and staff for their continued efforts towards making sure that our students are well educated and fed, and that all of our facilities are clean. I know it's a Herculean effort, and I hope that we can end this soon, but I also know that we are all grateful for their service. And other than that, I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Trustee Lampel.
I had the opportunity to visit Altamont School. I had a great visit over there. Got to spend some time with the new principal, Ms. Bogle. And I also got to see a couple of teachers in action on their computers with the students. And one of them was TK. How adorable that was. And, you know, you can hear the noise in the background. It's almost like a regular classroom. But the teachers are working so hard, and I send them all the kudos in the world. We hear that they're heroes, and they are. So I had a great visit at Altamont, and that's my report.
Thank you. Trustee Balzerini.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Trustee Clements.
Yes, I had the opportunity to take a tour of Cordis Elementary School on Monday, September 21st. And as you all know, I was unable to attend the ribbon cutting ceremony because of a COVID-19 scare that fortunately turned out to be a false alarm. So this was actually my first opportunity to see the new school. And as Trustee Lampel mentioned in the last board meeting, it is a beautiful school. The campus is incredible. I wanted to thank the teachers and staff for allowing me into their areas while maintaining proper social distancing, of course. It was great to see the teachers in action, and I did get a small inkling of the challenges that are unique to teaching younger grades when I heard a teacher trying to explain to a young child that no one could hear them and trying to explain how to turn off the mute. This was the first time I've ever entered a classroom since shelter-in-place order began, and I have to confess to my peers that I walked into what appeared to be an empty classroom and said good morning and asked how the teacher's day was going, only to realize that I was interrupting her online class. I won't mention any names, but I do apologize profusely for what was obviously a rookie move. So once again, I want to thank the teachers and classified staff for all they're doing during these challenging times. Thank you, Mr. President. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. And I would just like to echo the sentiments of my fellow board members in thanking all district staff, teachers, and everyone else for the efforts that they're putting forth to get us through this rough patch. Moving on to receiving of public comments. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, public comments in person are not possible at this time. There is a link in each agenda that where people can submit their comments. Are there any comments, Superintendent Nicholas?
Yes, we have a few here. I'll be reading them now. Supriya Ganager, thanks for keeping our community COVID safe. Please continue to do so by keeping the online distance learning plan on to protect our community from the second COVID wave. Second one is Venkata Yelapantula. Would like to mention about support for kids regarding advanced math. Kamna Jam. This is regarding the lack of any live instruction for advanced math students in the middle school. Edgenuity is not a very good platform and students are having many technical and logistical problems. Absence of any teacher guidance for the complex and advanced math concepts is going to have a huge impact on concept development for these students. Just a half-hour instruction would be greatly appreciated in this difficult time when students are left in the lurch with no guidance and social distancing. Thanks. Baba Madan. It's regarding middle school accelerated math. While Edgenuity is a good platform for instructions, but it isn't serving the purpose very well. We would be thankful if middle schoolers are provided with live instructions. They are too young to treat like an adult. I do understand that they are smart enough, but not enough to understand difficult concepts on their own. We as parents are doing our parts, but we are not teachers. Kindly look into this and help us. Preeti Harar Edgenuity. Srini Mari, we need live classes. Srinivas Raj Muddy. In addition to Edgenuity, we want the advanced math class to be taken by a teacher. It can be done online like for any other subject. Smitha Sev, we want a live instructor. Artie Palsania, please provide live instruction and interaction with the teacher to study accelerated math. Srilatha Yatham, in addition to Edgenuity, you know what, that's a repeater. Well, it's a different name, but it says the same thing. We need live instruction with teachers for accelerated students. Hamsa Koda, we want live instruction for accelerated math middle school kids. They are not old enough to learn geometry and algebra all by themselves. Saujanya Mamadi, kids are struggling with Edgenuity quiz. If they fail in 2 attempts, they are stuck and there is no live instruction for kids. Please help the kids. Ekta Jatli, can we have a live instructor for accelerated math students in 6th and 7th grade? Erica Whalen, many parents are interested in seeing a change in which accelerated middle school students are being taught. We would like to see the current reliance on Edgenuity change to a teacher-led daily 4 days lesson. These are challenging times for all of us, but particularly for students who need as much face time as with others as possible. Most children are proud to place into advanced math and are eager to do well. With this program, many students have seen a drop in their grades and have become quite discouraged. Teachers are facilitating how to navigate the program, but they should be teaching content, not how to navigate Edgenuity or be a stopgap in the learning process. In short, we would like the administration to provide a teacher for middle school advanced math students as soon as possible. Thank you. Baba Madan, it's regarding, that's a repeat, my apologies. Hari Charuku, Edgenuity issues for my 7th grader. We need live instructor. I think it is bad to leave them on to learn themselves. Sitha K, kids need live virtual learning for Edgenuity. And I'm double checking that this is not a repeater. Vekat Yella Panthula, hope we get a teacher soon. And the last one is Karim Arana. My kid is lowering his grades, need live instruction. That is all, Mr. President.
Thank you, and I trust that district staff will reach out to these individuals and discuss their concerns.
Yes, I think there's information Mr. Harrison will be presenting tonight, which will help with this, at least provide a framework for possible solutions. And I know that staff is already working with the families with the Edgenuity online program tied to COVID-related advanced accelerated math.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, consent items for consideration. Governing board meeting minutes, regular meeting, September 16th, 2020. Contracts under $50,000. Item C, ratification of 2020-2021 new hires. Item D, ratification of resignations. Item E, updated 2020-2021 fundraisers. Is there anything on consent items that any of the board members would like to pull or discuss?
I'll move for approval of consent items as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Having a first and second. Student preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The consent items are approved. And Trustee Lampel, would you like to do the honors?
Absolutely. We would like to welcome Shayna Davis to our Lammersville family. She is a self-contained classroom teacher. Welcome to Lammersville.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8, district administrative reports. Item A, superintendent's report. Dr. Nicholas.
Yes, I'm going to present this evening a summary of a survey we sent out to a combination of students, teachers, staff, and parents. We will be posting the entire set of surveys which were done by school on the website. What I'm presenting tonight is kind of some cornerstone questions and the results as a broad overview this evening. So if we, yeah, do good. Can everyone see it? My screen is off.
No.
Mr. President, board members, can you guys see on your screen the presentation?
No,
No, just seeing everyone's faces so far.
Okay, it's coming here right in a second.
There it
There we go.
is.
There it is. Okay. So we reached out. We said that we were this summer we were going to do a check-in as the first quarter and trimester came towards an end. So we sent this survey out right before the quarter ended at the high school. Obviously, we have a little bit of more time in the trimester. So we started with the students. So this summary, again, it was done by school site. In some instances, we have a total. And in this case, what we asked is just to give you a sense of the number of participants. We have approximately 3,000 total participants of all of the 4 categories that were reached out to. And you can see there which group is represented from it. And I think it's interesting to note that at the high school, there's more students that participated, and at the K-8s, the parents participated at a greater level, which is understandable. Okay, so the students' questions first is, how well have you adapted to distance learning on the online pathway? And so what we were hoping to see in these surveys is that the okay, better than okay to very well was going to be a larger portion than the not well or a little bit better than not well. And what we see here is from the students that participated that a significant number were okay or better. The second question that we've put here is, I have access to the Chromebook, iPad, laptop, or desktop computer. And it's really nice to see that nearly all of the participants, we have a couple of schools, Altamont and the high school, have to check into that there's one student that we need to provide some technology to, but that says that our kids have the tools they need to work the program as presented right now. Student question number 3 is, are you able to get help with assignments during your teacher's office hours or by appointment? And again, we were hoping to see a very large number of yeses, which we have here. We do have to do some check-in, and we're going to be reviewing this survey with the site administrators, and they will be reaching out to find the folks who said no, that they weren't able to get help with assignments. We need to correct that as fast as possible. Student question 4 is, how much time do you spend completing asynchronous or independent assignments compared to the time your teacher says that it should take? And again, what we were looking for is that it takes the same amount of time as the teacher says, but as you can see, we kind of have a nice little balance there between more time and less time. I think this will be good information for the principals to discuss with their teachers. There's a group of kids that it's too easy for, and maybe a group of kids that need additional supports. Question number 5 for students, how would you describe the relationship connections you are making with your teachers during distance learning LVLA? And we were hoping to see a lot in the my teachers have been successful in building relationships, and my teachers are working to build positive relationships, the teal and the green. And we can see that that's a higher percentage. However, it also tells our student services director, counselors, and principals that there are some kids who are that there's not a connection happening right now, and something that we need to address over time. And finally, question number 6, how would you describe the rigor, academic challenge of the lessons that you have received through distance learning and LVLA? And again, we don't want to see too many answers in the too easy or too difficult, and we want to see a lot that are similar, and the teal color represents similar, so that's nice. But I also think this gives good data for the principals to talk with their teachers, with the curriculum department, assistant superintendent Sherburne, and the like, to make sure that what we're putting out there is doable, not too easy, I guess the porridge is just right, not too hot and not too cold. All right, parent question number 1, how well is your student or students adapted to distance learning, LVLA, and online pathway? And again, what you see is the answers across the spectrum at each school site, from not well, okay, very well. But if you look to the right, what we wanted to see was more answers in the okay, better than okay, and very well category, which is a significantly higher population of survey participants than the not well, or a little bit better than not well. So we still have some means of reaching out to families and find out what we can do to support the folks in the not well and better than not well category. Does your student, parent question 2, does your student have adult guidance support to complete distance learning online pathway daily? And we wanted to see a significant blue bar, and we did. We have a number of students, again, good information for principals and student services, that if there's an issue with parents being able to support their children at home, we can reach out to those families. Question 3, parent question, do you know where to obtain resources for distance learning LVLA? And again, we wanted to see a very large blue bar, which we do see. We still have some communication that we can do through our communication vehicles by site for the folks that say no, that we need to make sure that they're informed as the folks in the blue bar are. The 4th parent question, when public health department determines schools can reopen following state guidelines, are you and your students prepared to come back to school in a hybrid model? And what we were hoping to see is a significant blue bar and a small teal bar. The green bar represents individuals that are in the LVLA or online pathway program. And so if you look to the right, we have a very large, significant number in the blue bar, but approximately 250 participants still have concerns about the transition to the hybrid model. Associate Superintendent Harrison will speak to the hybrid models this evening later on in our meeting. Teacher question, how well have you adapted to distance learning LVLA? And again, the same kind of spectrum across each of the school sites. What we wanted to see is green, yellow, and red in a much larger portion. That's okay, better than okay, and very well. We see that here. There are, however, of the teachers that participated, and I believe it's about 60% plus of our teachers, about 16 folks we need to have school site principals reach out and provide support. Question number 2, do you know where to obtain instructional resources to support your instruction during distance learning online pathway? We wanted to see a significant blue bar, and we do. Again, there's a few folks that are asking for some help, and so by site we'll find out who they are and provide them the assistance that they need. Question 3, and this is really a fascinating question. There's a summation of all of these vibrant colors on the next slide, but there are multiple categories we ask about. What are the 5 items that you're spending most of your time on? Lesson plans, preparing materials, grades, engagement logs, which is a state mandate, live instruction, office hours, email correspondence, or something else. And so the total of that on the next slide says that lesson plans, live instruction, and email correspondence are the big 3. That's very exciting because that would be the areas we would want our teachers spending the most time. Grades has a kind of a unique characteristic there of itself. And then preparing materials, engagement logs, and office hours are taking up the rest of the time. So I think that's a good a piece of information that bureaucracy is not leading the way, and that instruction-related matters are leading the way. Question 4 from the teachers, where are you primarily working from? That was just an interesting question. Some home, some school, some combo. So you have a nice balance across the district. The high school has more folks working at home, but in general, it's a nice balance. How has the communication from your site administration been? We want to see a large red bar there, and we do. Somewhat clear is the second one, and unclear is in blue. So we have some work to do to find out the folks who are feeling they're not getting the information that they need, and if we need to improve our channels or the way we're communicating with our teachers. Teacher question 6, when public health department determines schools can reopen following state guidelines, how prepared are you to return for in-person hybrid instruction? The category choices they could have was unprepared, somewhat prepared, prepared, and in yellow, I teach in the LVLA online program. What we wanted to see was more teal and green than blue. So I think it shows a nice balance there. However, there are some folks who are still concerned with the COVID-related issues as San Joaquin County has moved from purple to red, and the numbers are seemingly to continue to go down, so maybe red to orange. So definitely good information for all the administration and staff to know. Are you, teacher question number 7, are you collaborating with your peers? We wanted to see a very large blue bar and a very small teal, and that's what we received. Again, good data for principals to work with their staff on. Question 8, compared to the regular school year, is your collaboration with peers more or less? We wanted to see the same or more, and that's really what we're seeing. Less is teal, so there's some folks out there that might be getting isolated, so we'll share this with the site administrators, do an outreach and make sure that if you're in the teal category, it's not because you're being left out, and we're going to try to pull them in and get them part of the overall work of folks working together as we work through distance learning. And then finally, our classified and unrepresented staff were also asked a series of questions. Question 1, how well have you adapted to distance learning LVLA? One of the things we added to this was it does not apply to my job. We have some folks who are working in the district office and other areas that may not be impacted by the instructional model. But we have some folks in the not so good category, but the rest are doing fine. You can see the summary there on the right. In terms of question 2, where are you primarily working from? And most of the respondents are working from school or from the office. And question 3 is, how has communication from your site administration been? We want to see a big red bar there. So by site, we can make sure that if folks are feeling like they're not getting good communication from their leader, we can work with them and make sure folks are getting the information that they need. And when the I think this is the final question, when the public health department determines schools can reopen following state guidelines, how prepared are you to return in person for hybrid instruction? One category does not apply to my job. However, we wanted to see somewhat prepared, and that's the teal and the green. So again, our staff is by answering this question, we know that we have some folks to work with. And we want to make sure that as we move towards bringing kids back onto campus and towards a hybrid model and hopefully a full-scale model, that everyone has the information that they need to be prepared. So that is a summary, again, of a much larger survey, but those were the highlight questions that we wanted to bring forward this evening. We will post this presentation after it is reviewed with site administrators, and then we will post all of the answers from all the respondents by school at the same time.
I had some individuals reach out to me about the survey, and several said that they wish that there was a place in the survey for comments. In other words, questions that weren't addressed or that they wanted to expand upon from the survey. One question was suggestion was from a student who said that in the student portion, they would have liked to see something addressing how kids were feeling socially and emotionally with the online or distance learning model, so that we might have a better handle on how to help kids adjust to that part of it.
Thank you. Again, this is not the end of the process and the experience. This is the beginning. It was an outreach, so kind of trying to get information targeting specific things about the management of distance learning. And so obviously the principals, Mr. Harrison and I will be discussing that, and we have an admin forum on Monday. And so some of these follow-up things can also be addressed. But again, this is food for thought for all the folks that are working with each other. And then we can take and outreach of many different ways through many different communication channels with everyone and start a dialogue as opposed to this is all we were looking for.
And I would think something like that could go out from the site, now that we have over 6,000 students in the district, to ask open-ended questions would take a huge amount of staff time at the district to go through all of that. So I think we would need to break it down by site, and when they start sending stuff out from the sites, to be asking the open-ended questions.
Yes, all of this is possible. Again, what we wanted to do was to get a picture and then start the dialogue and work. That is my report, Mr. President.
Do we know what
Thank you.
percentage of staff responded?
Yeah, so Mr. Harrison's going to double check my memory on this, but I believe we have 276 teachers and 171 responded. And we have I blew it, darn it. 171 classified and 86 respondents.
Okay.
So, and unbelievably significant percentage.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Further questions or comments by the board? Moving on to item B, District Maintenance and Operations Report.
Good evening, Board President, trustees. I will be reporting
Good evening.
on behalf of Mr. LeGrand this evening. Good evening. There is no staff on campus this week, so the custodial staff is working on cleaning the exterior of the schools with blowers and power washing, changing light bulbs, both interior and exterior light bulbs, cleaning out storage and electrical closets. The operations staff is working on the following: picking up excess learning materials from the sites and delivering them to the warehouse for storage, stocking up on PPE items at the school sites as needed, fine-tuning the baseball and softball fields at the high school, dragging, edging, weed removal from the infield and warning track. They've gotten a little overrun. The maintenance staff is working on work orders. On Thursday, September 17th, we had our fire re-inspection at Cuesta. We passed. On Tuesday, September 22nd, the new concrete was poured at the pool deck. The broken area was repaired. On Thursday, September 24th, Jimmy conducted site walks with the electrical engineers and contractors for our potential solar project. Later on the 24th, Jimmy attended the District Facilities Committee meeting. He provided the committee with an update on site walks from earlier that day. On Tuesday, September 29th, Jimmy had a site walkthrough with the Cuesta administrative team. They discussed logistics for when the students return to campus. On Wednesday, September 30th, we had a fire inspection at the warehouse. We passed. Last Friday, the October 2nd, was National Custodian Day. All of the sites participated in some way, thanking our custodial staff for all their hard work. This afternoon, today, Jimmy conducted a lead custodial meeting. The big guy, or Mr. Harrison, was in attendance. I attended. Main topics were PPE supplies and resupplying, COVID cleaning, and students' potential return to campus. Any questions?
Thank you, Associate Superintendent Harrison. Moving on to item 9, action items. Item A, consider approval of 2020-2021 interdistrict transfer requests. I'm guessing
to
there's no
approve
staff
20
report.
Move to approve 2020-2021 interdistrict transfer requests.
Second.
Having a first and second, student preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consider approval of second reading of and adoption of updated board policies and administrative regulations. Staff report?
This is our normal process. We haven't had any feedback on any questions, so I would recommend that we pass this group.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Move to approve the second reading and adoption of updated board policies and administrative regulations.
Second, with my thanks to district staff for going through yet another batch of these things.
District staff and the committee. Thank you. Having a first and second, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, consider approval to adjourn from regular session to open a public hearing regarding governing board resolution to establish temporary interfund transfers. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Having a first and second, student preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned to public hearing regarding governing board resolution to establish temporary interfund transfers. Are there any public comments, Dr. Nicholas?
There are none now, but just briefly, this process that we're going through is new. It's associated with Senate Bill 820, which was the trailer bill language tied to the Senate Bill 98, which was the state budget. This increases the amount of interfund transfers from 75% max to 85% max. It's a precautionary measure from the state due to the budget restrictions. And that's just the overview of the process while we're waiting. There are no, Mr. President, there are no hearing comments.
Thank you. Item D was the
Public hearing.
public hearing for governing board resolution number 202105 to establish temporary entered fund transfers. Item E, consider approval to close public hearing and return to regular session.
So moved.
Second.
Having a first and second, student preferential vote.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now returned to regular session. Item F, consider approval of governing board resolution 20-21-05 to establish interfund transfers.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Having a first and second, student preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 10, information and discussion
need-
items.
Mr. President, do.
Oh, yes, we do. Roll call, please.
Matthew Balzerini,
Aye.
Ann Bonilla,
Aye.
Colin Clements,
Aye.
Sharon Lempel,
Aye.
David Pombo.
Aye. And I apologize, I was on a roll. I forgot to call for the roll call.
We're a team.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10, information and discussion items. Item A, phased rollout plans, small group cohorts, SDC intervention, and grade levels. Staff report?
Yeah, just a quick overview before I turn this over to Associate Superintendent Harrison. At the last board meeting, we had Dr. Saylor, our Director of Special Education, present an overview of the potential to bring back special day class students onto our campuses for in-person instruction. And then we said we would bring back a plan at this meeting. We have done so, and we are also looking at kind of laying out a series of phases to bring back more and more students onto campus. That is the result of our San Joaquin County moving officially into the red category from purple, which negates any of the former guideline responsibilities of districts, such as a waiver to start to consider larger numbers of students onto campus. So as Dr. Park, Maggie Park, who is the public health official, says, she recommends that phases of rollouts of kids onto campus is the most prudent course to take. So I'd like to turn this over to Mr. Harrison, who will specifically talk to SDC plans and also a broader overview of recommendations from staff to expand cohorts of students on our campus.
Thank you.
Board President Pombo, trustees.
Welcome, Associate Superintendent Harrison.
Thank you. So to start my presentation, we received guidance on small cohort groups, which I've presented before in a couple different forums. I just want to remind the board on what that guidance was. So we are allowed to have up to 14 students and 2 adults in a classroom, and that equates to a small cohort group. That cohort group, the idea and the design for the cohort groups is to limit time and to limit exposure of students and staff so that we can have smaller cohort groups working and learning. So the first small group we talked about was SDC students, and our SDC student group coming back would involve 6 different groupings of students, all under the 16 count threshold that is set by the CDPH. Now initially we're looking at October 19th as a date, and I'll get back to that later on in the presentation. This would be followed closely by EL students and at-risk students coming back to the school sites in small groups and getting specific help and specific learning opportunities beyond the distance learning. Now, we mentioned at the last board meeting that county programs, the county special education programs, are coming back to our school sites on October 12th. Those programs are at 4 of our school sites: the high school, Lammersville, Altamont, and Wickland school sites. In my presentation, I'm also going to talk about return of other groups and other grade levels. And the return of those grade levels in a protracted return, or as our superintendent so eloquently put previously, the difference between the tortoise and the hare, and we're going to continue to be the tortoise who always wins the race. Now, all of this presentation falls under the guidance of CDPH. Everything that I'm presenting tonight is within the guidelines provided by the CDPH. So one of the things we did a couple weeks ago is we started contacting parents of SDC students and finding out their feelings and their thoughts on returning to the school site for in-person instruction. Now I'm going to explain this chart. These are results of conversations that we had with our SDC parents. So if you look at the first column, it has the grouping of students. It's pre-K, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and high school. That's the normal grouping of our SDC classes. Now, if you look at the next column, that's the LVLA, or our online learning program. And those are the number of students that correspond with the grade level that want, parents who want their students to stay in distance learning for the school year. Now, we contacted these parents to find out where they are and their thoughts on their students moving to in-person instruction. The next column is the number of students by grouping whose parents want them to stay in distance learning and not return to hybrid instruction yet. And you can see the corresponding numbers. Pre-K is 5, K1 is 3, and so on. So the total hybrid in person is the next column, and those are the parents of students that want their children to return to school, get in-person instruction. Now the TBD column are parents that haven't returned our phone calls yet. And we've been calling parents for about 8 or 9 days now. The next column is the total students we're talking about. The next is the total staff. And then the final column is what the cohort size of the group would be, including adults and staff. So you'll notice there's an asterisk on the 14 under pre-K, and that's because the pre-K is going to be broken up into 2 groups in this proposal. So what are the cohorts we're looking at? As I mentioned before, preschool would be broken into 2 groups. That's at Wickland. K1 at Wickland, 2, 3 at Wickland, 4, 5 at Wickland, 6, 8 at Cuesta, and then the 9, 12 group obviously at Mountain House High School. So what would the school day look like for SDC preschool? So SDC preschool would go 4 days a week. Group 1 would be 8 to 9:30, Group 2, 11 to 12:30, with cleaning between the 2 groups. We set up the schedule this way because we wanted to keep the cohort group size manageable and small enough to not push against the size limitations that the CDPH has given us. You'll notice that the timing of the school day ends at 12:30. Students would have the opportunity to pick up a lunch and go in group 2, And the students in group 1, they could pick up the lunch as they normally do, and that's through the drive-through process. After 12:30, any time after that, this would be the hybrid portion of the learning, and that would be asynchronous time. And then Friday would continue, as is the practice currently. Friday would continue to be intervention prep and asynchronous learning time for the SDC preschool students. The SDC K-8 model is very similar. And these students would be attending school from 8 o'clock to noon in person, with lunch being a grab and go, as the other students would. And then asynchronous time would occur from 12:45 to 3:30. I have to apologize, there's a typo on this. The K-8 model would end at 12:30. Can you go back a slide? And the SDC preschool would end at 12. Those are typos. I apologize for that mistake. I needed to clarify that. Thank you.
Why would it be different for the second group would be an hour and not the first group? If you go back to the previous slide,
Yeah, if
8 to 9:30 is an hour and a half. 11 to 12:30 is also an hour and a half.
oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, it's not a mistake. I was going too far forward into the next slide. I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. That you're correct. That is not a typo. Thank you. So as I said, lunch would be grab and go, and then the asynchronous time would occur after lunch, 12:45 to 3:30, and then the Fridays would still be intervention prep and asynchronous time. I wanted to mention that at the top it says K-8 model. That includes 7 and 8. The next slide, if you can move the next slide. Thank you. The next slide is the high school slide. And I know this is very busy with the times on the left, but the high school will be having periods of attendance when we return to hybrid model at the high school. And the SDC students would come back to a period schedule of 1 through 4 on Mondays, Tuesdays 5 through 7 with success, and then repeated on Thursday and Friday. The difference is on Wednesday is their intervention and prep day. That's the day that the high school is doing intervention and prep for all students. You'll see a similar schedule as we look later on in the presentation for a high school model. So what are the next steps? As I said previously, we would have a tentative start date of October 19th. October 19th is the criterion date for us being in the red as a county, having back-to-back 2-week sessions of being in red. On October 19th, like Dr. Nicholas pointed out, we would be free to bring students back to the school site without a waiver. We would communicate with bargaining units. We already have had some communications with bargaining units and given them a thumbnail sketch of this plan. We need to communicate with the schedules with parents and work with them on what the schedule will look like. We need to continue to glean teacher input. And then logistics, we have to work with administration, custodial, and nutrition services to make sure that our school sites are safe, that we have food for our students, and that logistically we know where students enter, where students exit, and get used to the idea of social distancing, that students have to wear a face covering, etc. So the timeline to return, like I talked about, purple became red, and when red becomes official on October 19th, if we stay in the red category, this phased-in transitional process can apply to all of our students. So we want to bring the students with most need first, and I think I kind of talked about that with SDC and our EL students and students at risk. And I'm going to go through some hybrid models that you'll probably recall from a presentation we made a while back, getting approval from the board on our hybrid models. And then the springtime goal, this is a lofty goal we hope we can achieve, is traditional in-person instruction. Now that doesn't include the LVLA or the online pathway students who have the opportunity to stay in that program for the school year. So what does a timeline look like for this transition to hybrid learning at our school sites? So it could look like TKK, students begin in-person instruction on October 26th. Now you'll note that the next line all TKK teachers return to the school site on October 19th. One of the things we've talked about as a staff and we've talked about with our units, our bargaining units, is bringing staff back to the school site prior to the start date of students being there for live instruction. The reasoning behind this is to give staff an opportunity to A, get reacclimatized to their classroom if they have been teaching from home, B, get some training on site safety practices, procedures, how rooms are going to be cleaned, how students are going to communicate and walk around campus, and how they're going to go to recess, how they're going to go to lunch for the older grades, etc. So we've proposed an October 19th return for all TKK teachers, with the students beginning hybrid in-person instruction on October 26th. For first and second grade, we're looking at hybrid in-person instruction on November 3rd, with the teachers returning to the school site on October 26th. On October 26th. Now, grades 3 through 5 would begin hybrid in-person instruction on November 30th, with all 3 through 5 grade teachers returning to the school site on November 16th. Grades 6 through 8, students begin hybrid in-person instruction on January 4th, and all grades 6 through 8 teachers return to the school site on December 16th. And just a reminder, that's the week prior to the 2-week holiday break. And then grades 9-12 would have the same schedule as the 6-8, January 4th return, with teachers returning to the school site on December 16th. So here's a visual representation of what the hybrid model schedule could look like for TK3. AB schedule, students 8 to 12 with a grab and go lunch with asynchronous and elective and prep time in the afternoon. B, having an 8 to 12 with a grab and go lunch at 12 o'clock and asynchronous electives and prep in the afternoon. Friday would maintain and still be intervention, asynchronous time, and prep and deep cleaning time for the school site. The model for grades 4-8 is similar. This is the later end time. This is where I got confused earlier in the presentation. I apologize. A group would go 8 to 12:30, and B group 8 to 12:30 with a grab and go lunch at 12:30 with asynchronous and elective prep time in the afternoon. Fridays would remain the same: intervention, asynchronous prep, and deep cleaning. You'll note at the top that the hybrid model says 4-8. The next slide says hybrid model schedule 7-8 prior. The reason I included this because the board may recall that this is the model that was approved back in May, I believe it was, for hybrid models. And we realized as staff talked to site principals and talked to our bargaining units and talked to teachers, can you go back a slide, please? We realized that our staff needed more time to prep. So you'll notice each afternoon has time in the schedule for teachers to do two things. One, provide live instruction via recording or something like that, but also to prepare their asynchronous instructional lessons for the B group or the A group on their asynchronous days. Having the teachers teach all the way to 3 o'clock is counterintuitive because they don't have time in their day to prepare their lessons for the A group's asynchronous time as well as the B group's synchronous time. So that's why we changed the schedule slightly to allow for that extra teacher time in the afternoon. Could you advance? One more, please. Thank you. And then the high school, their AB schedule that was approved by the board is remaining very similar to what was presented back in, I believe it was May, with the Wednesday intervention asynchronous time still on the schedule. You'll note that there is a great deal of time up there for success or intervention time, which I believe is a boon for our students, providing extra time and extra blocks of time where students can come in cohort groups will benefit our kids that are falling behind. You'll notice here that there is a lunch on campus, and the lunch is about 50 minutes. Sorry, 45 minutes. Lunch will be spread out all over campus. We will have benches in a variety of areas around the campus. We will open another window by the C building so that there will be multiple areas for students to get lunch, so we can cut down on the number of students that are in lunch lines. And remember, it's half the students that are on campus for hybrid. That's about 1,400 students. So we're talking about 700 students per day in the A or B day. So what is our hope for the spring? Full schedule in-person traditional instruction starting March 1st. That is our hope. We're hoping that that can happen. And that would be excluding LVLA and online pathway. Our next steps also include evaluate lessons learned. So what did we learn during this time when we're doing distance learning for all of our students? I think that our teachers learned a lot about instructional delivery, the blended model, how to deliver instruction via the computer. Maintenance and sanitization. We learned a lot about how we need to clean and how we need to organize our campuses and organize our kids so that we have a safe campus when it comes to the spreading of COVID-19 or anything related. And then our internal processes between HR, business, educational services, just understanding how we can adapt and shift gears when things change in a dramatic way. And I think we learned a lot in our internal processes during this time. That is my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. How long do the SDC preschool kids come to school now? What's
3
the
hours.
length of their day?
They have a 3-hour day, so their day would be cut in half in this schedule.
Okay. Because when I saw an hour and a half, I mean, good grief, it takes at least an hour, a half hour to 45 minutes to settle them down. I just don't see that as a lot of instruction time, an hour and a half. I initially had concerns about the cleaning in between, but what we're hearing from science now is that we have to worry more about airborne than the surfaces. I just don't know how effectively that can be cleaned in between. I think that's undue pressure on our custodial staff. And I don't know, there's something about the preschool schedule that I don't think it's sufficient. I don't think our kids are going to get enough. I'm talking about just SDC.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, Sharon, I noticed that also. It seemed like it would be more beneficial if the kids could go 2 days in a row, or like all for the 3 hours, and then we could clean the next day, or have them go one AA and then clean and then BB or something like that, so that they could be there more for more instructional time.
Yeah. So I
Are you, excuse, just for clarification, are you speaking to this first cohort groups that are coming back? It was the board's direction last board meeting to have them on 4 days a week. Yeah, so I just want to.
We did have that discussion, but we didn't realize it was only going to be an hour and a half that the kids were in school.
Right. The school days generally.
And everybody else is going half of their time, so that makes sense.
Right. And they go 3 hours. Yeah. And the concern was there were a group of 14, so we didn't. We felt like we had to split them in half because we were pushing the envelope on the class size, which is why we split them in half.
Yeah, I get that. So, yeah, I just, an hour and a half is a very short period of time. So answer me this. What do preschool SDC kids do during asynchronous time?
I don't have the answer to that question. I would have to do some research for you on that one. I'm not really sure. I would guess some social skills and learning how to learn.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've expressed my concern. That's.
We could embark on this and really take a very fine look at the hour and a half and see what it is, And if there's missing something, I think there would be ample opportunity to expand the time as well. Our concern was getting the youngest, most needy students on campus and kind of acclimate them to it. So there's always the ability to expand things. It's better, the old lesson of it's better to go too slow and get better than to go too fast and clean up a mess. So if it's okay with the board, we can start with the hour and a half and then report back after a couple of weeks and say, okay, so here's what we learned about an hour and a half with SDC pre-K, and then make recommendations for keeping it the same or expanding it.
Okay.
I get that. I would have liked to have seen them in school, maybe 2 hours. Our other teachers of the older kids, need more time to plan that asynchronous time. But these teachers, this probably one class, right? This one teacher.
Yep.
could have had a
So the
group in
cleaning will
morning
not
or
take,
in the afternoon. It is what it is, and I'm not hearing a lot of chatter about it. I just don't think this is, I just want it to be on the record. I don't think this is sufficient amount of instructional time for our absolute neediest kids.
I agree with you, Sharon. I think that those students need a lot more time. They're at that fundamental and stage in learning, and they're already behind. A lot of those students need a lot more time to be developing all those skills. And that's going to be difficult to do asynchronously for a little one. That puts a lot of pressure on the parents. But
Nothing's going to happen asynchronously with preschool SDC kids.
I did also have a question about the SDC integration. I noticed that we've got all of the students returning to Wickland except for the 6th through 8th graders, and I understand that's how it's typically done. However, it makes it seem, first of all, I feel like those students at Cuesta are going to be very isolated. There's going to be that one group, and they're not going to have a lot of people to socialize with. So that's a concern. And then there's a large group at Wickland, which means almost too much socialization. So I realize that we're looking at how things have been done in the past, but it might be a time to look at our past practices and see how we can improve them.
I understand the concerns of Trustee Lampella and Trustee Bonilla, but I agree with Dr. Nicholas that we need to get something going. I think we get this going and fine tune it as we go, because we need to get something going, and we can't keep changing what we want staff to do. So I think we get going with it and fine tune it as we go.
if I may, there's wiggle room in the cleaning. We left plenty of cleaning time. It's only one classroom and we left an hour and a half. I don't think it's going to take us an hour and a half to clean that Singleton classroom, but we did that to leave us plenty of wiggle room and time to figure out, if we're going to need that. So there is some space for wiggling in there.
Okay. I did have one other question. I noticed we're phasing in all of the grammar schools or the K-8 schools, but everyone's returning to the high school at the same time. And I can see that that's partly a result of calendaring. However, I'm wondering if we could phase in, 9th and 10th grade back in November and then bring the rest of the high school kids on. But also that may be an issue of staffing. So
that would be ideal. But we do have the issue with some teachers teach multiple grade levels, and it would be a real challenge to be on campus for only 9, 10, and then you have 11, 12 distance. It might get messy with staffing.
Okay, that's what I thought. So
I would also imagine that some classes probably have kids in different grades. Like
You would be correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay, got it.
So also with the phase in, I have a question. When we talked about moving into the red, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 board meetings ago, it was said that once we made the decision to bring kids back to school, we were going to give the staff in the community 4 weeks notice. I just wanted to bring that up in case someone in the in the public brings it up. I believe kids belong in school. I'm a little nervous that we're going a little fast, but I was glad to see that there were some later dates and the phase in. But we did say when we brought kids back that there would be a 4-week period. So I don't know if anyone's going to hold us to that. One more question. Were the elementaries, was the Teachers Association unwilling to change that Friday for planning to Wednesday? It would just make more sense to me to be in the middle of the week so they can prepare for the other 2 days.
Staff was, the K staff was very attached to that Friday because it's been that Friday for so long, and they've used that for their collaboration day, their early release day for so long. That's why the Friday stuck.
Can I tell you how much I hate the answer because we've always done it that way?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. I mean, if the whole idea of having that day is to assist the kids and to give the teachers even more planning time, because they need more planning time than they normally have. I get that, but it just, when would it make sense to have it? I don't expect you to change it if the Teachers Association is pushing to leave it on Friday. Not a big deal, not a deal breaker.
Further questions or comments by the board?
Yeah, I have a question because I've been holding back and listening because and we're talking specifically about the SDC and the 4-day a week and the amount of time, and I like to hang back and listen to what Trustee Bonilla and Trustee Lampel have to say. But my question is, did the plan, I call it an exposure draft in the county, did the current teachers, what I call boots on the ground, did they have feedback on the 1.5 hours of instruction time? I'm just curious to hear what, if any.
One teacher. There's only one teacher.
Oh, did we get feedback from that individual?
Dr. Saylor met with all of the SDC teachers with this plan and with this schedule and got their feedback and tacit approval before it came to the board.
Okay.
So they have been informed and discussed with and had the ability to shape the plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments by the board? Thank you, Associate Superintendent Harrison.
Thank you.
Moving on to item B, in-person board meetings. I know it was discussed previously that we dropped this from the agenda, but I felt like it should be included on the agenda since we now have dates in place for students returning to campuses and classrooms. And so I was hoping we could discuss it as a board when and how we would like to get back to in-person board meetings.
I would say the first meeting in November seems appropriate.
Any other feedback on?
I
Is
agree
there-
with that. That
Yeah.
seems appropriate.
I agree, because by then, most of our kids will be back in school. Will we have the option of some people doing distance? We had discussed that at the last meeting.
Yeah, in fact, we have a very exciting presentation now to help answer that question, and it's my my thrill to introduce Thor Harrison doing his Vanna White impression of a divider that we. Sorry, you're not in the picture. There you go. So these were created for the school sites and their offices as a divider with plastic thing, plexiglass to keep interactions with spittle free. We would customize it to the dais here, and it would sit in between the members. If the board that gives, we believe we have the technology to have not all the board members at one time, but some board members distance without the echo. Again, the technology hasn't been fully vetted or tested, but we believe that to be true. So the answer is yes, as long as the technology doesn't prove me wrong.
Further questions or
Well,
comments? But
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. So there will be students and teachers with live instruction on campus before the next board meeting, correct? Under our current plan?
Special day class starts October 19th. Today's the 7th, so 14 days from the 7th would be the 21st. So the answer is yes by 2 days. And I believe we have approximately 45 SDC students in total that will be on campus at that time.
Okay. I would prefer to be live, but I'll go with the will of the board on that, with the consensus of the board on that.
What do you mean?
I just, as I've said in previous meetings, I feel strongly that before we tell students and teachers they can and should go back, that
Okay.
that we're live. And to be clear, I support and defend each board member's right and responsibility to make the decision for themselves as to what's safe for them. I just feel strongly that if possible, and technology could prevent it and all of these things, but if possible, I would like to have the opportunity to be live before students and teachers are.
To that end, I have a question for Dr. Nicholas, or perhaps Associate Superintendent Harrison. Before, there was talk about the time that it would take to set the boardroom up and get the technology up and vetted and that sort of thing before we start in-person board meetings. Is that something that could be done in the next 2 weeks, or is more time than 2 weeks prior to the next board meeting needed?
Well, the barricades are going to take some time because they're being done on individuals' private time. In terms of the echo that we got with the multiple Zooms, that's unfixable. So there's a workaround. I mean, if the direction, I think it would be better to give us a little bit more time.
Fair enough.
I have a question going back to the students coming back to school. What happens if there's a resurgence of cases in San Joaquin County and it gets totally out of control?
According to Dr. Park, that once purple becomes red, irrespective of a red goes back to purple in the community, it's up to the individual school district to determine school by school following the public health guidelines. So we will be on all districts will be on their own.
Mm-hmm. So that's probably something we should be thinking about, just in case, and be prepared, because we've been so well prepared for everything else, as best as possible.
I think we will move from obsessive to hyper obsessive. Again, it's part of the slow rollout is the idea of let's get it done with a small group, test our system, add some more kids, test the system, add some more kids, test the system. So that's our tortoise mindset. But every plan is usually a plan, a well thought out plan is a good plan, and then you put it into play and there's always something goofy. So, but in terms of, I don't believe this district will ever go through a process of a waiver through county approval, because it looks like in the next week or so, formal red is going to come live and there's no more need for a waiver. So that's a kind of a lot of explanation to what your comment was. But yes, we're, other than catching Thor talking to himself in the corner, we're there.
I did have one other question regarding when we're coming back to school. I know we're bringing the SDC students back because they have the highest need. I believe the EL students also have a pretty high need. at the next meeting, I'd really like to hear if we've got any plans in place for intervention time for the EL students.
So what I hear is you want an info and discussion item on EL instruction in general with the interventions to make sure they're not falling behind.
Exactly. Thank you.
And are you looking for intervention or ELD or both?
I'm just looking to see if we are putting anything in place to help the English language learners. Since I'm on the DLAC committee, I'd like to be in general.
I had a question about the high school returning.
Yes.
Does this mean that like all grades 6th to 12th will not return until January 4th? Will we continue online?
Mm-hmm.
The easy answer, as Mr. Harrison walks up to the microphone, is yes. We wanted to start with our youngest kids who require have the most to learn over time, and we wanted to start with them first. I stole his thunder, I think.
Further questions or comments by the board?
I'd like to kind of piggyback on what Trustee Lampel was saying about what is our plan if the county goes back to purple? Because I understand that they're not going to intervene. Up until this point, we've had very specific direction from the state and the county on what to do and when to come back or when we're able to come back or seek a waiver. I'd like to remind the board, in case anyone forgets, that back in July, the governor said that everyone had to come back to school unless we got a waiver, and then we could not come back to school. And then they completely did a 180. So I anticipate that the county and the state is going to screw this up again, and there's going to be another resurgence. And then what? What's our plan?
I have a clarifying question to piggyback on Trustee Balzerini's concern. If we go back, are there still guidelines in place from the county and or state that say if X number of students or there will be no guidelines for that per school site or district, we'll just be completely on our own?
I think I can answer both of your questions with the same answer, at least partly. The CDPH still has guidelines for school sites, and that is if we have 3 cases on any given school site, whether it be student, teacher, administrator, 3 students, 2 students and a teacher, whatever, if we have 3 cases on any one school site, that school site immediately goes back to distance learning. And it is 14 days until that school site can be reconsidered to have students back on campus. So there are still rules for what they call an outbreak. They call that at the CDPH, that is defined as an outbreak on a school campus. And it's not more for bigger schools. Like if you're a high school, it's the same rules as if you're Lammersville school. So the 3 applies to all schools. And furthermore, at the next board meeting, I'm going to be giving a presentation on school site safety and sanitization and the processes that we're following at the school sites to ensure student safety, cleaning, staff safety, et cetera, at the next board meeting.
Follow-up question. Is there not also guidelines that say if so many people in a district or so many schools in a district are affected that the entire district has to shut down for a time?
That was in the original guidance. I'm not sure if that's in the most recent guidance, but you're correct. It was in guidance from July. I would have to check the most recent guidance to see if that is still in place as a guideline. I do know the 3 cases per school site is still in the current rules from the CDPH.
I think that's where my confusion came in, is because I know that that was scrapped, what President Palmer was just talking about, but I didn't realize that the 3 cases in one school is still valid. I thought that was out as well.
Anyway, I much prefer the more local regulation than the countywide, because a county, especially one like San Joaquin, has such a wide variety of populations that, you know, Stockton, for instance, may have a huge issue with COVID, and Mountain House or Lodi or some other part of the county may not be having an issue. And when it's all lumped into a county by group, it makes things more difficult, I think.
Well, my concern is if there's a resurgence in the county and we don't do anything, there's going to be a lot of questions. So let's get out in front of that now before waiting for the county to go back to purple again. We should tell people that we're either going to make the decision then, or we're going to continue unless we see X, Y, and Z. But I believe we should have a plan before we come back.
I do know that the county makes the health data available by zip code, which means that we would be able to pull the data for our zip code and make decisions as a board based on the 95391 zip code.
Yes, and on that, the zip code doesn't perfectly align with the borders of the district, but I would guess that well over 90% of the students in the district are within that 95391 zip code. So it's a pretty good indicator, I would think. I do agree with Trustee Balzerini. We should have and Trustee Lampel, we should have a thought process and guidelines in place that, you know, in the event that X happens, we know what we are doing, at least going in. We may not follow that precisely depending on the exact situation, but I like the idea of having guidelines in place for our district apart from the state and county guidelines.
Well, I would recommend that we base that on data so that we say if there's X number of residents in the 95391 zip code and X number of those, X% of those are diagnosed positive with COVID, then we need to make some action. I think that's probably the best way to go. So I recommend that staff develop something like that.
And if it's the will of the board, I would request that staff come back with some recommendations at our next board meeting, and it's placed as a discussion item so that we can discuss what the recommendations of staff at that time and move forward.
Just one more comment, Mr. President. My recommendation, honestly, since I believe the state and the county have screwed this up royally, I would like to stay in school unless there's extenuating circumstances and deal with it on a case by case. I think these kids need to be in school. I think that what's happened up to this point has been a travesty. I think that these kids did not need to be out of school, and they've been out of school, and it's going to affect learning, and it's affecting mental health for sure. So I would like to see us stay in school unless we are either directed not to, or there's some sort of extenuating circumstance. If a parent doesn't want to let have their child come back to school when there's an outbreak, then they can do distance learning. But that's what I personally would like to recommend.
I agree with Trustee Balzerini, and as I said earlier, that's why I like doing it locally rather than whatever goes on in the county, because we don't necessarily represent the entire county.
So what I hear
Nor
the
they,
direction from the board is that we're going to give an info and discussion presentation focused in on safety based on the public health guidelines, and make some recommendations, potentially scenario based, for how we would solve the problems for the board to hear and give direction.
I believe that is the consensus.
And while Trustee Bonilla brought up the data, we did look, and since the beginning of the COVID outbreak, there's been 184 cases in the zip code 95391. Beverly Hills 90210 got in my head, and I said no. So that was embarrassing. So so we will give the presentation and prepare for the slow rollout at the same time.
Could I ask for staff to send us just the one slide with the timeline of when or maybe more than one slide, when each group is returning to school.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next item, I would just like to make certain that the consensus of the board is to resume in-person board meetings the first meeting of November.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item C, facilities update.
Could we
Evelyn
go back
Cost-
to that for a minute, Mr. President?
Certainly.
With the option, if the district's computer system can handle it, if some board members felt they needed to be distanced.
Correct.
Yes.
We'll bring back the whole package.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item C, facilities update, Evelyn Costa School. Staff report, Dr. Nicholas.
I'm writing a note. One moment, please.
Certainly.
Yep.
Item C, facilities update, Evelyn Costa School, staff report. Oh, you were waiting for the screen to come up.
It was a great introduction. Okay, so we've the Evelyn Costa Elementary School and the nature of neighborhood AB, also known as Costa Village, also known as College Park, is a complicated journey. But I do have some information towards progress to resolve some things that we've been waiting to work out. So again, this is the rendering the board approved for Evelyn Costa School, a two-story school of multiple buildings. The site will sit on 18 acres in neighborhood A. Once we finish all of the processes, just like we've celebrated recently with Julius Corda School, we will celebrate a school that looks like that. So neighborhood AB, if you notice, it's south of Grant Line Road. It has the original design had the dog ears, which are in purple, AB, thus the name. And a specific plan that allowed us to choose to build one school or two school based on the district board direction. If you see this map, it's the same map, but it shows two specific issues that the district has been dealing with. We have a piece of territory in neighborhood A, which is delineated with small little squares and colors. That is considered developed and mapped properties that houses can be built on, and those are properties that we can tie Melrose taxes to. If you see the blank areas and the common areas, some of those properties are in various states of existence. Some are still owned by the original property owners. Some are being planned to be developed, but they haven't become part of the process that would lead to a generation of Melrose taxes. And as a result, it has created complications for the district in developing the approval plan and design of the school. So who are the key players in neighborhood AB? The master developer is represented by Mountain House Investors, MHI, and the manager that represents that, the master developer is Jerry Camilos. The builders that are currently operating in neighborhood AB are Century Homes, Cahovinian Homes, we call them KHOV, and there will be, I can tell the board, additional builders coming on queue to build houses, but they have not, those contracts have not been signed, and a lot of that has to do with those areas that are not mapped and developed. So here is an update on the school design and construction. Based on our assumptions from well over a year ago, we had a plan that would basically roll out 4 schools over an 8-year period. We opened Hanson in 2018, Cordis in 2020. Our original plan was Costa in 2022 and Neighborhood K School in 2024. Complications with the construction planning specifically tied to school funding agreements has delayed our ability to be able to meet the 2022 timeline. I can also say on a side note, delays in issues related to neighborhood K tied to a different developer and other issues, complicated issues with developers in conflict with each other. The neighborhood K school will also be delayed in design as that neighborhood is stalled out for a period of time. So what we can say right now is this school, Evelyn Costa School, will be built in 2 phases. In discussions with our architect today, the school will be completed in 2023, not 2022. So where are we at right now? There's 2 parts to it. The school is currently being designed, and parts of those design have been stalled based on these funding agreements. But in detailed discussions with our architect today, our best case scenario is the architectural design and the DSA approval process will be completed in early summer of 2021. Best case scenario, 6 months, 9 months more likely from now. And the 5004 application, which puts us on the state funding list to get matching funds, will also be done concurrently, which will be in this early summer of 2021. The construction then would begin right then in 2021, and our best case scenario on an 18-month construction contract model would have the school completed sometime in January of 2023. So because of these delays, the school would not be able to formally open on our normal sequence until August of 2023. But I do want to inform the board that if student population numbers are robust enough, we would be able to consider a mid-year opening and make sure that logistics do not create a large disruption. So the Evelyn Costa funding, the total estimation for the complete build of the school when phase 1 and phase 2 are completed, the cost would be an estimation in today's dollars of $50 million. The school neighborhood AB school, as I said earlier, is tied to specific Plan 3 of the Master Development Plan. And the board determined 2 very important things over the last year and a half. One is that we will build 1 school, not 2. That saves a significant amount of money, primarily because we wouldn't have 2 small 450 student schools with 2 offices, 2 cafeterias, 2 music rooms, etc. And the second thing is the board approved Community Facilities District, CFD, 2019-1, which is the mechanism that drives the Mello-Roos taxes that ultimately lead to paying for that portion of the construction of the school. Our district will always sell Mello-Roos bonds on mapped, formally approved maps on developed properties. No circumstance will force us to sell bonds on undeveloped properties as the yield for construction is smaller. So we will continue to follow that process. That is part of the delay that I've been discussing. So developed versus undeveloped property is very simple. There's a county-based process that developers go through. There's a Mountain House CSD approval process of a plan. There are have-tos that developers have to meet to pay their mitigation to their impact of building houses on a community. So all of those things have to fall into place for a mapped and developed property to be eligible for the full yield Mello-Roos taxes. So the construction schedule for phase 1 is a $30 million cost. It's not a 50-50 split when you do a 2-phase build because of underground infrastructure. And in order to open the school, we need a multi-use room and an admin office that would ultimately drive the $50 million price, phase 1, to $30 million per the estimation of our architect. So in the funding phases, if you look at those small little boxes there on the map to the right, those are eligible to be sold. Mello-Roos taxes are able to generate bonds to the tune of approximately $16 million when the time would be right for a construction contract over the next year or so. So that leaves us with a challenge. Number one is we need $30 million. And the other mechanism besides Mello-Roos taxes to gain funds is state matching funds. At present, there is no state construction bond, as a 2020 construction bond was voted down by the voters. Critics of that, the writing of the language of that bond would say that there were too many unnecessary add-ons to the bond for it to be popular with the voters. We have been told by our contacts at the state that a 2022 state construction bond that is straightforward will go forward in 2022. Regardless of that, Mello-Roos taxes and state matching funds are the two mechanisms to raise money to pay for the construction of a school. So what does a school district such as ours do when there's no access to state matching funds? There is a provision in the mitigation agreement, section 5.1, which defines how a district deals with shortfall funding. So that brings us to the term sheet agreement, where yesterday in an important meeting with two attorneys, one representing our district and myself, and one representing MHI with Mr. Camilos and their attorney, moved significantly progress towards what we need to do to define the terms of how we're going to deal with shortfall funding. So there are two term sheet agreements. The first one essentially is a wording agreement that will lead us to the ability to sell Mello-Roos bonds that are going to be that have been identified to pay for the indirect and soft costs of the construction. So there is the construction of a school, and then there's the design costs, the engineering costs, the fees associated with the approval process, et cetera, which will come in a little over $4 million. What we will be able to do with this Mello-Roos sell is to pay the share needed to start the process, which is the major cost of the design, and that language was agreed upon yesterday. The second term sheet agreement is tied to the construction, and that leads us to the shortfall between the $30 million cost estimation and our ability to raise $16 million in Mello-Roos bonds. So the gap is, or the delta is $14 million. So that is the responsibility per the mitigation agreement of the master developer, Mountain House Investors. Again, the cost of the construction is $30 million. Mitigation agreement section 5.1 identifies the process that we need to go through to put the developer on notice for their responsibility to pay the shortfall. And so the term sheet agreement for the direct cost, we came to an agreement on the language. Ultimately, what's going to happen is what Mountain House Investors agreed to yesterday, along with their attorney and our attorney writing the language, which I should receive a draft copy of tomorrow or early Friday morning, is that Mountain House Investors will provide the shortfall. It will be tied to a reimbursement for that is associated with earlier development and mitigation costs that are being paid back through a bond unrelated to our district. And LUSD, our district, will pay back the shortfall funding when the state matching funds come through after a 2022 state construction bond is passed. And we receive that when the state sells the bonds related to that state construction bond. The bottom line is that is the presentation and an update on where we're at on the construction of Costa School. I was also asked to get the board's input on two important parts of the school's design. So I'm going to move to that part of my presentation, and then I'll answer questions once we finish that. So when the original site for the Costa School was in Neighborhood B, per MHI, they requested we move it to Neighborhood A. So I was asked by Mr. King of NMR for the board's direction of whether or not the board wants 2 baseball fields or 2 soccer fields. I have 2 renderings for you to take a look at. And there's a tacit outdoor classroom space. One design option is a circle, the other is a diamond. So I'm going to show you the first one. So if you look at the bottom of the rendering, There's 2 baseball fields that sandwich a soccer field. And if you go to the middle of the campus where the quad is, you see a circular place in between 2 buildings in a quad area. So that is rendering 1. Again, the board is going to give direction on whether they want that quad area to be a circle or a diamond, and whether in the south part of that picture you want 2 soccer fields or 2 baseball fields. The second rendering shows the diamond setup, and it also shows how the 2 soccer fields would be set up. And with that, my presentation is concluded. And then we need board direction on the 2 soccer fields versus 2 baseball fields and the circle or the diamond. And then if you had any questions on the other matters.
Is the circle bigger than the diamond?
I don't believe so, but the diamond is not in the center of that circle. So I could ask that question, but I would think that they would be about the same size because they're intended for the same purpose.
Yeah.
I
What
think-
staff thinks, yeah.
It's kind of hard to tell from the rendering. I think I want to vote that we do 2 soccer fields. I'm not sure about the circle or the diamond. I think I prefer the circle, but
Question, the large circle to the far left of, is that a running track or what is
It's a cricket field.
cricket field?
We've long tried to get a cricket field on our elementary campuses, and we've worked with local community members who are a part of a cricket league, and we have been trying to figure out how to make this work. So it fit on this campus, and we thought that was a long-standing request of the community, and that's what that is.
Thank you. I agree with Trustee Bonilla. I think that in consideration of our the makeup of our community and also the popularity or burgeoning popularity of soccer, I think that 2 soccer fields would probably be preferable. Also, the fact that soccer fields can be used for football and other activities as well would push my thoughts towards 2 soccer fields.
So I have 2 soccer fields, and it looks like so far the circle is the winner on the outdoor classroom.
I'm fine with the outdoor classroom being any shape. I just like the idea of an outdoor classroom. Are there any other comments by the board on either of the questions?
I don't have an opinion. There's a first time for everything.
Indeed, everybody will have to mark this down on their calendars.
I mean, if the soccer fields meet the community needs more than baseball fields, then I'm all for that.
I feel they probably would.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a general consensus on circle or diamond, or would you like staff to make that recommendation?
I'm going to vote on circle, and I'll go with the 2 soccer fields.
Okay.
Sounds like we have a consensus then. If anybody else would like to chime in, feel free. Otherwise, I believe we have a consensus for 2 soccer fields and a circle.
I do have a question on the financing discussion.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So one of the last lines on the last slide relating to financing talked about I believe that when we get matching funds, that would go back to MHI.
So the shortfall funds are not a gift. They're essentially a bridge loan, and there has to be a reimbursement.
Right.
And so if we don't have the state matching funds, then the state matching funds would pay the bridge loan, in this case, the shortfall. Did that answer your question?
And if the bond is not passed, then matching funds wouldn't be there, and then what?
It would live in purgatory until it was passed.
Okay.
My role is to get the money in the shortfall model to get phase one constructed. It's the master developer's responsibility to pay the shortfall. And if it gets delayed because of the state construction bond, that the waiting game to get that funding back would be on them. Obviously, there will be some amortization of some interest that comes with that, but
I don't know why all of a sudden I was panicking that they had some kind of reach into the general fund if the bond wasn't passed, but that's
No.
not the case.
no.
In other words, if the bond isn't passed, we would have to set up a payment schedule similar to a home mortgage to make payments on that shortfall funding until such bond was passed.
So the way we're working on this is that when the state funds come in, those funds will be dedicated to pay the bridge loan. The district is not financing through the shortfall model money. It's not a financing. It's simply following the mitigation agreement, which is there's a shortfall claim. We're short X amount of dollars. X amount of dollars is going to be covered, and they get the reimbursement when the state funds come in.
So in other words, minus the construction bond, the shortfall still exists.
Yes.
The shortfall exists on the books of the master developer, not on the district.
Correct. That's exactly what I mean. And also, just to clarify, the matching funds is not truly matching.
That's fair to say too. Yes, it's on paper it looks like a great plan. In 1998, I think all of us who have lived through these things know that the school district, the school board in particular, is asked to do an enormous amount of high pressure decision making to get these beautiful schools built, and in a corporate commercial development mindset.
Well, I think they are truly matching funds. The only issue is they match the expenses that they choose to match. They don't match every expense.
The way I would describe it is every one of these schools has a story. This one is a unique story in itself. It is true that the state matching funds, once you're on the list, there is amortization of what is the original promise over time as well. But we never are made completely whole based on the promises and cost escalations. I can, as the board knows, I can assure the community that.
Further questions or comments by the board? Thank you for that presentation, Dr. Nicholas. Moving on to item 11, calendar. Wednesday, October 21st will be our next virtual, will be the virtual wellness meeting at 3:30 p.m. Later that evening will be the next virtual governing board meeting at 7 p.m. Thursday, October 22nd will be the virtual DLAC meeting at 6:30, and Tuesday, November 3rd will be the next meeting of the Educational Committee at 6:30. In just a moment, we will be adjourning to closed session where we will discuss public employee discipline dismissal release complaint, Government Code 54957. Item B, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9B. Item C, conference with real property negotiators, Government Code 54956.8. Item D, consider approval of a long-term leave of absence for a certificated employee. Item E, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. Government Code 54956.9D1, San Joaquin County Court Superior Court Case number 004709. Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
Thank you. Having a first and second, student preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We're now adjourned to closed session. I will ask for about a 5-minute break and then we will. We are reporting out of closed session and Dr. Nicholas is going to read.
Action from closed session, 10/7/2020. President Pombo reports the following action from closed session. Closed session, item C, consider approval of long-term leave of absence for certificated employee number 129925 from 11/10/20 to 06/04/21. The board took action on a motion by trustee Matt Balzerini and seconded by trustee Sharon Lampel to approve long-term leave of absence for certificated employee number 129925 from November 10th, 2020 to June 4th, 2021 by the following vote, 5 ayes.
I'll move to
Thank you,
adjourn.
Dr. Nicholas.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Having a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.